pratfall effect is your likability will increase if you aren't perfect. So keep moving forward, keep striving, trying to be the best version of you, and fall down, but keep getting back up, one foot in front of the other. You got this. Welcome to Something for Everybody. My name is Aaron Mashpitz, and today we are covering the 6 powerful, very powerful psychological effects that explain how our brains tick. Understanding the psychology behind why we tick might help us to tick even better, right? If you're looking for a way to really supercharge your personal development, understanding the psychology behind our actions is an essential first step. Fortunately, knowing is half the battle. That's why becoming aware or recognizing that growth is even possible, that change is even possible, or that you need to make a change, or you could potentially make a change that would benefit your overall well-being. That's why if you take it in a 3-step process, the first step is awareness, the second step is acceptance, and the third step is action, right? You have to become aware, recognize, understand, know, and then accept as is. Be very honest and realistic about your current situation or your current starting point. And then the third very important, crucial step is moving into action. Daily, consistent action with small steps so you can actually manage moving forward. So you're making your habits and your actions too small to fail. So again, knowing is very important. Understanding how our psychology ticks and the psychology behind our actions is a beautiful initial step. Becoming aware, moving into acceptance, and then moving into action. And so the following 6 psychological facts are just a guide. They're a guide to your self-improvement based on some of the brain's sort of default settings. So this is really sort of your backstage pass to how our brain functions and how we can best avoid common misconceptions. So right now I'm just going to say what all 6 psychological effects are and then explain what each one is based on my understanding, based on the literature that I'm reading, and then sort of break it down to the best of my ability as we go through these together. As I start to understand these things, we're working through them together. I am no expert. I'm just someone who cares and is trying to best understand myself and human flourishing so I can improve, just like you. We're all on the journey together, and we're all always on the journey together. So the 6 psychological effects that explain our brains. 1, the pratfall effect. 2, the Pygmalion effect. 3, the paradox of choice. 4, the bystander effect. 5, the spotlight effect. And 6, the focusing effect. So those are the 6. Now we're going to dive into one at a time. Number 1, the pratfall effect. Your likability will increase if you aren't perfect. How amazing is that? We have this need, this constant chase for perfection, when really a human being is flawed, makes mistakes, and is definitely not perfect. A perfect person has never existed, and you and I will not be the first ones. And according to this psychological effect, the pratfall effect, your likability will increase if you aren't perfect. So don't worry about tripping or falling in front of your partner, your boyfriend, your friend, your family. Doing so will only make them like you more. So it's important to admit your setbacks and your obstacles to your friends and family, right? Your humanness and that connection, that common humanity that we're pulling on will just endear you to them even more. It's sort of like the mistakes attract charm as a result of the pratfall effect. Those who never make mistakes are perceived as less likable than those who commit the occasional faux pas. Messing up draws people closer to you, makes you more human. Perfection creates a distance, an unattractive air of invincibility. Those of us with flaws win out every time. This theory was tested by psychologist Elliot Arozon. In his test, he asked participants to listen to recordings of people answering a quiz. Select recordings included the sound of a person knocking over a cup of coffee. When participants were asked to rate the quizzers on likability, the coffee spill group came out on top. So this is a beautiful reminder and a real psychological effect and part of our brain's default settings that it serves as a good reminder it's okay to be fallible. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fall down. It's okay to have setbacks. Those are what make you a beautiful, complex, wonderful human being. Occasional mistakes are not only acceptable, they may turn out to be beneficial. And so think about that when you're striving to be your absolute best self. You have to think about it as a spiraling up, right? There's a trajectory up, there's a down, but then there's that spiraling back up because you're making this sort of constant, deliberate progress to aim to show up as the best version of yourself. And through those mistakes, through those setbacks, through those obstacles, through those challenges, you are becoming the best version of you and not claiming to be perfect or never make a mistake or never screw up, but you're claiming to have that common humanity which pulls and connects everyone together on a much deeper level. So that's the pratfall effect. Again, the pratfall effect is your likability will increase if you aren't perfect. So keep moving forward, keep striving, trying to be the best version of you, and fall down, but keep getting back up, one foot in front of the other. You got this. Number 2, the Pygmalion effect. Greater expectations drive greater performance. This is very interesting. The crux of this psychological phenomenon is the concept of self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe something is true of yourself, eventually it will be. So it's basically saying, act like the person that you wish to become. If you want to be a person who makes healthy choices, if you want to be the person who sticks to their routines, who does the things they say they're going to do, then act like that person. Act like that person. If you believe something is true of yourself, eventually it will be. But it takes a consistent, deliberate, persistent effort to get there. From my understanding, this is the Pygmalion effect. So Rosenthal, the first test of the Pygmalion effect was performed by psychologist Robert Rosenthal and occurred in an elementary school classroom with first and second grade students. And Rosenthal summarized his findings with this quote: "One person expects of another can come to serve as a self-fulfilling prophecy. The effect was dubbed Pygmalion, named after Ovid tale of the sculptor who falls in love with one of his statues." Key takeaway here is the applications for the Pygmalion effect can have benefits both for personal development and leadership. Individually, you can challenge yourself with more difficult goals and tasks in effort to rise to meet the challenge. So you want to be this type of person who does these type of things. Well, tell yourself, I am the type of person who acts this way. Then reinforce that behavior. That's like me. That's like me. That's like me. That's like me to go to the gym. That's like me to do push-ups. That's like me to have a digital Sabbath. That's like me to go on a run. That's like me to meditate, right? So you're rising to meet the challenge because you're believing that you are that next version or that best version of yourself. And as a leader, when you expect great things of your team, you may see improved performance in them. You expect great things in them, just like you expect great things from yourself, but it's okay, just like the previous effect. If you fall short of that, you get back up, you support each other, you go all in on the connections, on the relationships, and you move forward together. That's sort of the application here for the Pygmalion effect to the best of my understanding. Like I said earlier, I'm sort of trying to understand and go through these things together with you guys, and when I talk about them out loud, it helps me understand them better. It helps me study them better. So that's sort of the point of this podcast, is to learn out loud and to fail in public and to move through that with the best grace and understanding that I can, and taking you guys along the journey with me. So thank you if you're still here listening or watching. Number 3, The paradox of choice. The more choices we have, the less likely we are to be content with our decision. Have you ever felt buyer's remorse? If so, you've seen the paradox of choice in effect. Even if our ultimate decision is clearly correct, when faced with many choices, we are less likely to be happy with what we choose. No doubt this is familiar to you. When I eat out, I often second guess my menu choices. When you buy a new car, you might toss and turn over the decision. A wealth of choices makes finding contentment that much harder. To prove this paradox, psychologists Mark Lepper and Sheena Linger conducted an experiment at a supermarket jam. At a gourmet food store, Lepper and Linger set out to display a high-quality jams and taste samples. In one test, they offered 6 varieties. Another test, they offered 24. The results of the study showed that 30% of people exposed to the smaller selection ended up purchasing a jar of jam. Only 3% of the people exposed to the larger selection purchased jam. Wow, very interesting. So a key takeaway is a simple solution to the paradox of choice: give yourself fewer options. That's really hard nowadays, right? There's so many options, there's so many different things to choose from, there's so many different things that are grabbing our attention at a constant level and basis. That's why we have to put constraints, boundaries, emotional parameters around these things, and that's why we have to get really, really, really concrete and serious about our purpose, our fulfillment, and our joy, and how we gain meaning in life, and to go and move through that in a very focused direction, because then we're getting pulled in by all of these things. And then when you start to get more notoriety, more influence, more impact, a lot of more things come in your direction. But if you've already put those guardrails on and you've shined a bright light to where you want to go and what's important to you and what matters most, then you're going to be able to stay in those guardrails and be able to sort of remove this psychological effect of the paradox of choice. And then you're going to be able to be content and fulfilled and grateful for what you have. And you know the choice you made was yours because you made it through your core values, through your personal philosophy, and aiming at this higher, larger, overarching goal that means something to you. And so that's the key takeaway. Give yourself fewer options. Focus on what makes you happy and what gives you meaning to your life. That's very important. Next one, I think this is number 4. The bystander effect. The more people who see someone in need, the less likely that person is to receive help. I mean, this is similar to the paradox of choice. It just happens to be called the bystander effect, and with people, right? The more people who see someone in need, the less likely that person is to receive help. The parable of the Good Samaritan illustrates this effect clearly. So too the many tragic events throughout history. Researchers call it a confusion of responsibility, where individuals feel less responsibility for the outcome of an event when others are around. In fact, the probability of help is inversely related to the number of people present. If you're ever to need assistance, don't go looking for it in a crowd. The bystander effect was shown in a study by social psychologists Bibb Latany and John Darley. The key takeaway is be very specific when you need help. Ask someone for help by name so as to remove the confusion of responsibility. This is especially counterintuitive since we naturally assume saying to a larger group to help us will encourage more people to jump in, when really the opposite is the case. To avoid frustration, pick out one person only every time. And then you can think about it in a way when we're asking for help. Maybe we're struggling with our mental health, or we need a little extra support, or something's going on in our life. Send that specific request for help to the people you love and trust the most, because they're the most likely to respond in a way that's supportive, that's kind, that's nurturing, and then you can nurture each other together through that relationship, because we know that asking for help is a sign of strength, especially when we need it most, especially when maybe our brain and our body is telling us that we're a burden and no one cares for us. That's not true. That's not true. People do care for you. People do love you. You are not a burden. And so when we're asking for help, so there's no confusion of responsibility, ask that person directly. Tell them that you need help. Tell them why you're struggling. And they will be willing to sit in the dark with you, to care for you, to love you, to support you as you move through your own actions, to be your own best friend, to be the superhero that you need in that moment, with them as sort of this guiding light, this someone holding your hand. And so that's a key takeaway for me when talking about the bystander effect. I understand the effect is talking about sort of a large group of people, but if we break it down a little bit, we can get into that area that I was just speaking about. Next one, the spotlight effect. Your mistakes are not noticed as much as you think. The perception of our being under constant scrutiny is merely in our own minds, and the paranoia and self-doubt that we feel each time we make a mistake does not truly reflect reality. According to the spotlight effect, people aren't paying attention at our moments of failure nearly as much as we think. To test the hypothesis, to test the spotlight effect, a team of psychologists at Cornell asked a group of test subjects to wear an embarrassing t-shirt and estimate how many people had noticed what they were wearing. The estimations of test subjects were twice as high as the actual number. The estimations of the test subjects were twice as high as the actual number. It goes right in line with sort of expectations, with trying to be perfect. These are our brain's default settings. It's the spotlight effect, tested by social psychologists to be true. Your mistakes are not as noticed as much as you think. We beat ourselves up more than anyone else will. And so if we can be the ones to give ourselves grace, to be our own best friend, to hold our own hand, to tell ourselves it's going to be okay when we fall down, and then to pick ourselves up, to have built that mental strength, that mental capacity, because we put some time in the mental gym, in the mental fitness gym, to grow those reps and sets and to hardwire that stuff into our brain, that we are going to make mistakes, we're going to fall down, we're going to come short of our expectations. We're going to do all of these things in our aim to become the best version of ourselves. That's part of the journey. It's the hero's journey, and no hero goes through a journey and reaches the epic place he's trying to reach without scars, without battle scars, without real tough battle scars, without looking at the dragon head on and facing the dragon. The hero's journey is about facing the dragon, voluntarily facing the dragon, voluntarily doing the hard thing day in and day out, voluntarily taking on responsibility for our actions and our words. And when we do make mistakes, when we do fall short, we're the ones who are beating ourselves up more than anyone else. And so we have to give ourselves the grace and the kindness to then pick ourselves back up over and over and over, and continually spiraling up and continually closing the gap and becoming the best version of ourselves and making our prior best our new baseline. And so your mistakes are not amplified by anyone else except for you. And there's different circumstances for that. Sports, on a larger stage, business, Olympics, things of that nature are a bit different. But for you and I, in this moment speaking, your mistakes are not being amplified. They're not being put on the news, right? You have to give yourself the grace in those moments to realize that mistakes are a beautiful part of doing hard things. You will fall short, absolutely. You will not be perfect. But that's the beauty of it, because there's progress in those moments. There's progress in the trenches. And if you keep moving, step forward, one step at a time, one tiny little small step at a time, you are doing it. You are absolutely doing it. And then reiterating, learning, iterating, growing, reflecting, transforming, evolving, growing, moving into that thing, learning from the things that pushed you down, learning from the things that make you scared, that learning from the spot that you just got really comfortable in. How can you step outside of that comfort zone voluntarily? How can you face the dragon voluntarily each and every day, day in and day out? because you will get more brave. You will get more courageous. And that's a beautiful thing to realize within ourselves. And so think about the spotlight effect, our brain's sort of default mechanism when thinking about the next time you make a mistake, right? The spotlight effect. Your mistakes are not as noticed as much as you think. And then if we go up to the first one, which is the pratfall effect, your likability will increase if you aren't perfect. Those couple go hand in hand. Now, let's get to the last one. The focusing effect. The focusing effect. People place too much importance on one aspect of an event and fail to recognize other factors. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is while you are thinking about it. That's an interesting quote. How great is the difference in mood between someone who earns high income and someone who earns lower income? The difference does exist, but is 1/3 less significant than most people expect. This illustrates the focusing effect. In the income example, the factor of income as it relates to mood overshadows the myriad of other circumstances at play. Very interesting. So to combat this effect, it is important to remember to keep perspective. Look at problems from many different angles, weigh several factors before making a decision. The downfall really of the focusing effect is that it can lead to mistakes in predicting future outcomes. If you can avoid sort of this tunnel vision, or at least acknowledge that it may exist, you can improve your chances of making a sound choice. And then we think about, the paradox of choice as well. All these psychological effects intertwine and play with each other in terms of our self-development, our growth, our life, our brain, all of these things. And so that's really important to think about. So think about, have you ever experienced some of these psychological effects before? If so, how well did you deal with overcoming them? Please let me know how you did. I'd love to hear about how you combat them, how you dealt with them. If you dealt with them, do you notice dealing with them? All of these things are really important because, as we spoke about at the top of this episode, we want to think about awareness, recognize, right? We're recognizing that we have at least six psychological effects that explain how our brains tick. And so knowing is half the battle. Understanding that and being able to supercharge your personal development through understanding the psychology behind our actions, right? That's why that's the first step of awareness. And then we accept it as is. These psychological facts are true. They're true psychological facts, and I tried to break them down as best I could with my understanding, but I urge you then to see these and hear these 6 psychological effects and facts, and then try to apply them into your own life. Try to see them happening. Try to notice when they are happening. How can you combat them? How can they best serve you in your journey? That's really what we're after. And so we think about awareness, right? Knowing, recognizing, moving to accepting, being honest about and realistic about our current situation, and then moving into action. So digesting all of this information, trying to understand it the best we possibly can, and then moving into action to best combat these things and best use these things in a way that will supercharge our growth, our development, and our just overall sense and perception of the world and how other people interact with the world, how we interact with the world, and how we can best move forward, again, to become the absolute best version of ourselves, whatever that may look like for you, your life, your circumstances, and your environment. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in. Those, again, were the 6 powerful psychological effects that explain how our brains tick. Thank you, and I will see you next time.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But above all else, most importantly, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.